Hey everybody, this is Nick Inman, founder of VolumeProfileTrader.com on Monday, February 25th, and I just want to go in the market here and kind of look at what is moving this market right now and look at a few opportunities that I see both from a day trading standpoint and also maybe a swing trade standpoint. And what we're looking at here is a market that gapped open today higher. Bear with me a second. It gapped open higher today, only to be sold off into. So you can see this morning and overnight, I guess it started really on Thursday afternoon, we rallied, and then this morning basically you see this big 2-hour bar that moves straight down. We want to be paying attention to these bars because they matter. You can see, going back, these big bars, these big moves down, lead to little snapbacks and vice versa. So what you're likely to see here is a little bit of an oversold bounce here. But once we get back up to that 1500, 1505 level, you look for those sellers to be back, and you want to look, in my opinion, you want to look to sell with them. If you want to get an idea for the slope of this trend right here, you can kind of see with the Pitchforks what's going on here, and you can see the slope of this. So this is something that you do want to look to sell into strength. Even if it consolidates sideways for a couple of days with a slight upward bias, I still think the point is you want to sell into it. So what I'm going to do here is bring it down a little more in 5-day. I'm going to do a 1600 tick on the ES. Now, these lines here, those are just the pivots. I can remove those for a second just so you can get a better idea of what's going on here. So we got our low that occurred, and something that I like to do and I'm getting into a lot more in the day trading time frame are these pitchforks, and you kind of wait for higher lows and lower highs to start forming, or vice versa, whichever way you want to look at it. And I look at the major swings. So for example, on this down move, the highs were right up here at 1504 or so, and we didn't breach them until later on in the afternoon when we got the reversal. Well, on that move down, you saw your lower highs, lower lows, and we didn't really, on this snapback here, you had some pullbacks, but they were so short term that you could hardly really notice them, except for in hindsight here. But what I want to point out is I'm going to draw a few lines here, and hopefully this makes a little bit of sense. So standard pitchforks would be you wait for the higher low, or excuse me, the higher high, which would be right here when it pierced above this swing high. And then once we got above this swing high right over here, this was a successful higher low. So theoretically, what you'd want to do is draw a pitchfork, and it's going to give you that trend that you're looking for. So in this range here, you'd be looking to get long around 1505. You wrote it up 4 points. You trailing, probably got stopped out. But the point is that it works. And then once we got out of that pitchfork, you see a little double top here, and all of a sudden, we start selling off to the downside. So you could. Now I'm going to explain this one too. Bear with me 1 second. So the idea is the same as you have this downward slope, and then all of a sudden it broke out of that. But that's I don't think that's neither here nor there. Another way I want to look at it is think about it in real time. You get this higher low here, right here, above this high. All you have is this information in front of you. What if you take the last 3 major swings and use that as your pitchfork? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this one, and let's see what it looks like. So there, this time, this was a top up at the high, and we had a lower high, so this was probably a sell signal here. And the target would be the median line. And that's what we got, and then we drifted sideways, we move down just for a brief moment, basically like a wash and rinse, and then a continuation touches the extreme. Today we gapped higher and continue to go. Now I want to zoom out on that and kind of give you an idea of what was going on there, and you can see that we really just exploded out of the top, and then once we got back in, we retested it here, and then retested the median line, and then started our descent. Now again, looking at it here, arguably the last swing low was oops, wrong tool. The last swing low was right here, except for right here. So when it breaks right here, we're going to go ahead and draw some downsloping lines to get a gauge for where it's going. So there it goes, it breaks. We're basically close to the end of the initial balance. You can see here around 10:25, 10:30 is the end of the initial balance. I'm going to draw the same theory here using the last three extremes. I'm going to draw across. I'm going to delete. Sorry, I'm going to make it less messy. I'm going to delete the other one. And, you can see it wasn't perfect. But what did it do? What did it do? It told us that the trend was down. And basically any rally was to be sold into. And you can see even the lower extreme was the right spot to be a seller. Now I'm going to draw it one more time a little differently, the proper way. I'm going to use A, B, and C. Let's see, was that lower high? No. So what I'm going to do, let's see, for afternoon trading, since it didn't breach this low here, I'm going to ignore that. I'm going to go to the next low. We're going to go right here. So I'm going to delete this. And this is our slope for the afternoon. And what does it do? It gives us a pretty good idea of where we were going. Around 3 o'clock Eastern, we got a good sell signal. So that was just on the ES there. Now let's change it up. Let's go to the Nasdaq. This is what I like to focus on during the day. And one thing that I want to note out immediately is we have a little bit of a sell signal here at 27.64. This is a potential major sell signal. What's going on here? We are dipping below 2-month value, where we've seen extremes, where it's been right to be a buyer. Now we're kind of dipping below that, and on top of that, we have a lower high at the point of control for the month of February. This is signaling to me some type of topping pattern. We definitely want to be careful. We definitely want to be looking south on this one. Look at the potential slope on this. Let me zoom out. And you can see, this is pretty extreme. The target really would be 26.50, which is the gap and the point of control from the new year, and the point of control is from December. So what I want to do, I want to zoom in here. I'm going to bring this one down to a 233 tick. And again, okay, on Friday, or excuse me, going into today, let's see, 9:30. So this is the start of the pit session. All right, going in, we see we're in an uptrend. We can draw the pitchforks right now, and you can see the major swing high from Thursday here. We breach it here. I'm just going to go ahead and go to the next high. And then the way I like to draw it is, this is important. I'm going to zoom in so we can see. All right, you see how this was a double top? I'm going to the furthest one in time. You see how this was a low, but it kind of faded out, and then we basically retested it and then made a higher low. Well, that higher low ended up, that was the pivot that went above these highs. So that's what I want to be paying attention to, and those are my lines going into the morning. Well, guess what? Into the morning, we're right at the extreme here. We're still making higher highs here, so we have to be careful, and we're making higher lows. So we have to be careful, but we want to be watching it. We want to be opportunistic. And then I think finally, now arguably you have it here too, where you have, your highs, and then it starts to trail off. But we've retested here. We tested once. we trade off, and then we tested a second time, a lower high here relative to the median lines, and then a double top. And from there, we started to get lower highs. So, you could arguably draw a median line like that, and look how good price stays within this, defining the slope. And let me zoom out so we can see a little better. And eventually, because that's so narrow, that is going to end eventually. And, we want to be paying attention to that. But we also, let's zoom back over. We also start to break these lows here. And once we do that, we can do one or two things. We can take the last three major pivots. And I'm going to zoom out so we can see that. Alright. And you can see how good of a job price did staying within those. Or we can wait for this to develop more, and we can take the last three major pivots. Alright, actually before I go into that, let me delete this. Notice also on this pullback here, we're pulling back and testing the bottom median line from this upsloping one. So that's something that's also pretty interesting. You get like a little double top here, then a lower high. That's the type of formation you're looking for, and those are, that's a way to trade off of, this slope. But let's see, going into the afternoon, let's see, we start to break major new lows. You could draw it like this, and then you may have to do a like a shift, depending on if it's not capturing price well. But considering this is capturing price pretty damn good, we'll stick with this, and then once it starts to really break, if you wanted to redraw it and get that slope, that's fine too. But the point is, this gives you a good tool to use to project the potential trend, and I love to use it for day trading now. So if you want more information on that, give me an email, shoot me an email, nick@volumeprofiletrader.com, and we can start a little dialogue and go back and forth on that. So really the last thing I want to show is, bear with me 1 second, the euro. And the euro's been extremely volatile, and it's been extremely profitable if you know how to trade this. So going into the pit session, let's call it around 8 o'clock Eastern, 8:30, close enough. What we have here is some definite peaks and valleys. I'm going to take the last three extreme pivots, draw them across. What do we see? Well, we see fails to get to the top of the median line. That's not necessarily all uncommon. Sorry, I'm looking back, making sure I have the right lines, and I think I do. But what we have here is, eventually what's different between this and this. This we have the lower high, higher low starting, and in that case, we can start to draw something like this, which gives us a potential slope to the downside, and you can see that did a fairly good job of describing price and the slope of price. And then, the more extreme it gets on the sell-off side, that's good. And, vice versa for the buy side. But it's good because that means if you're sticking with this slope, which is being short, then obviously when it takes off like this to the downside, assuming you're letting, you're letting the trade ride, this is profits right here, and this is how you do it. So if you wanted to get a little more fancy, I'm gonna get back into this 233 so we can see the higher lows better. But you can really see what's going on here. This thing, just a slippery slope all the way down, lower highs, lower lows, lower highs. And you had these balance phases, which is fine, but were they short-lived? Yeah, they're extremely short-lived. And one thing to note, alright, we make a new higher low here, we make a new high here. So you would make it something along these lines, and it works out until it fails. So, you know, if that's your thing where you're trying to scalp these, you know, 5, 10 tick trades, that's fine. But when it starts to not work out, you know, it just gets very micromanaging like, and that's what you don't necessarily want. So let's focus on what works, and that's the overall multi-day trend sort of thing, and you know, kind of going from there. So I guess the last thing I want to do is, to be fair, I want to give you one more example of these pitchforks and how to use them to your advantage. So what I'm going to do is I'll say going into this following day here, we'll know, let's see, 5:45, 7:30. You get what I'm saying. We're getting to late morning on the Eastern time, and we're going into the next morning session. What do we have? We have a new low, but we did recover some. So one thing that you could do is look at this two ways. One, this is a continuation of the downtrend, so I'm going to take the last 3 major pivots, draw it across, and you can see the potential slope would be still a pretty steep sell-off. Or I could draw it the other way, where this could be an extreme, just because, let me explain why. This could be an extreme low because this was the last major high, and we started to breach that in after hours. Does that make sense? Last major high, where we really flushed again, and we got above that level. Now you could argue, and now you see kind of what happened. But you could argue and be like, this was really the last major high. But keep it in context. When you're looking at this right here, where was the last major high? It was right here. So that's kind of your line in the sand. So when we continue to slide down, what's your last major high? Sure, you could argue right here, but when it starts to breach above those levels, you're thinking, no, it wasn't right here. It's really, kind of right here. And if it lines up with other levels, such as like the point of control or, value area or Fibonacci level, whatever you want to say, then that makes it even more valid to the point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to not use that way, and I'm going to go ahead and draw like this. I'm going to draw an upsloping one. And what happens when we go into the next session? Let's see. Bear with me one second. All right. So here we are into the morning session. And was this median line valid? And I would argue yes. And the reason why is because on this upsloping median right here, was there support and resistance along this line? Yeah, there was. There were some major, moves here that could have made money. It fell off. It broke below the bottom median line. Traded under it where it was resistance, and going into the morning you see what happens. So if you want, you can draw it a few different ways. We broke below this low, so arguably you could draw it like this, if that makes sense. Or you can draw it, if you want to zoom out a little more. Bear with me one second. Or you can draw it like this, alright? So we make a new low here, and that's when you draw it. So you pivot A, B, C, it gets drawn across. You can see it touches the median line. So you have this consolidation here, and then all of a sudden we print a lower high here, and you're just looking for the sellers to come in. And, your target is the median line. We balance, we trade back up to the upper extreme, and then in the overnight, we start to trade sideways. Now let's go back. Remember this pivot here? We had something like this. Alright. What I'm going to do is zoom out, or zoom over, Look at what happens. We touch the top perfectly, lower high, bam, flush. Also, this right here, let's see if it's relevant. Oh, look at that. The lows bounced off of those levels. Another way to look at it is this pivot. Again, I'll move it over, and it bounced off the lows here. So those are just ways that you can use them. And everyone's different. Everyone will see it a little bit different. It takes practice, but the more you get used to it, the better you'll get at it. And I guess just for the heck of it, we can go into oil and give you an example there too. So let's try to project this move up and then back down. All right, looking at this extremely messy price action, we see a very a high here and another high here, lows. We get the point. It's definitely range bound, and no matter how you draw it, it's a little bit of a messy chart. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to project the next move up here, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit more and kind of get this near this price action that's the most relevant. And you can see the highs that we have made. So what do we have? We have our low, we have our high relative to these three highs, and then we have our low that makes a new high. So I'm going to draw it simply like that, and then look how it projects price up, up, and away, and then we break below. So what happens? You can draw it, remember, you can draw it like this, and you may have to do a shift there. Nope, that's not going to do it. So I'm going to go straight to this one. We break new lows. Here was our last, swing area. So as I zoom in here, this was our last swing low, arguably. Then we make new swing lows. So you could draw it like this. New swing lows. That was your swing high. Then we move lower. You can see it projects price. It projects it okay, but then eventually it trades off of it. So we probably need a little more information to get a better line. And the best way to probably do that is to, let's see, how about, what does that look like? And as I move over, you can see it works for a little bit, and then it breaks out, and then we consolidate sideways. So then you arguably have something like this, where you can see it comes up, touches the median line, but ends up failing. So you have a bunch of failing median lines that are extremely short term, that you're micromanaging in a sense. So then you have the downsloping one, which ends up paying off for the rest of the day. And one thing I want to say is, you can say, okay, well, you broke out here. Yes, you did, but pay attention closely. Did you take out this swing high here? No, you didn't. So the downtrend remains. And you have your double top, then you have your little lower high here and a flush down to the median line. But I think the point is, when it gets like this, you want to kind of zoom out and get a broader view here. So I would probably do something more along the lines of this, maybe even like this, for the median lines. And that's for oil going into the following day, just like we used it, going into the overnight / early morning on oil last night. We did the same thing here. So it's up to you on how you want to read it or how you want to draw it. You just practice with them, and practice makes perfect. But there's not necessarily a right and wrong, but you want to make sure that you're grabbing the right pivots, or you're recognizing the pivots that matter. And what you're going to learn here is being able to read these swing high and swing lows is, like for example, price, you don't have a swing swing high until you make a new high, or swing low until you make, excuse me, other way around. You don't have a swing low until you make a new high. So this isn't a swing low right here until this high, goes above this swing high. Then, you kind of stair step so you can see higher lows, extremely basic stuff, but sometimes it's overlooked. So, anyways, I hope this helps. Let's stay focused on what's going on here. We probably have a short-term oversold bounce in the markets, but we're going to look to sell into those. So, anyways, take care, have a great night, and I'll talk to you next time.